Picture this. You are standing on the deck of a ship made of steel so thin you could practically punch through it. You are the captain of a destroyer, the USS Johnston. You weigh 2,000 tons. On the horizon, coming straight at you, is a monster. The Japanese battleship Yamato. It weighs 70,000 tons. 5 times your size, and its guns fire shells that weigh as much as a small car. Common sense says run. Physics says run. Survival instinct screams at you to make smoke and hide. But at 7 a.m. on October 25th, 1944, Commander Ernest Evans does not run. He grabs the microphone and gives an order that sounds like absolute insanity. All engines ahead, flank, left full rudder. He is not turning away. He is charging headlong into the entire Japanese Navy, alone. This is the story of the greatest mismatch in naval history. To understand why a single American destroyer would commit suicide by attacking a battleship fleet, we need to understand where they were. October 25th, 1944, off the island of Samar in the Philippines, the U.S. Navy had just landed thousands of troops on the beaches of Leyte. To protect them, the Navy set up 3 groups of escort carriers, called Taffy 1, Taffy 2, and Taffy 3. The USS Johnston was part of Taffy 3. These were not the big, fast fleet carriers you see in the movies. These were escort carriers, jeep carriers, slow, small, unarmored, basically floating parking lots for airplanes, designed to hunt submarines and support ground troops. They were never meant to fight other ships. Protecting these slow carriers was a screen of destroyers and destroyer escorts. Sailors called them tin cans, and that nickname was literal. A Fletcher-class destroyer like the Johnston had no armor plating. The hull was 3/8 of an inch of steel. A heavy machine gun could punch right through it. Their job was simple: hunt submarines, shoot down airplanes. But on that morning, a massive Japanese fleet slipped through the American defenses undetected. They had 4 battleships, including the Yamato, the largest warship ever built. They had 6 heavy cruisers and 11 destroyers. The Japanese plan was to sail right into Lake Gulf and massacre the defenseless transport ships, unloading troops on the beach. The only thing standing in their way was Taffy 3, a handful of slow carriers and tin can destroyers. When the Japanese masts appeared on the horizon, the American Admiral, Clifton Sprague, could not believe his eyes. He immediately ordered his carriers to turn and run. He ordered them to make smoke, to burn oil, to create a thick chemical fog to hide behind. Every ship in the task force turned away to escape the slaughter. Every ship except one. Commander Ernest Evans was a Cherokee from Oklahoma. Before the Johnston was commissioned, he told his crew, "This is going to be a fighting ship. I intend to go in harm's way, and anyone who doesn't want to go along had better get off right now." Nobody got off, and on October 25th, Evans kept his promise. Without waiting for orders, Evans broke formation. While the rest of the fleet ran south, the Johnston turned north, directly toward the enemy. The math was suicidal. The Japanese battleships could fire effectively from 20 miles away. The Johnston's 5-inch guns had a range of only 10 miles. To even scratch the enemy, Evans had to close a 10-mile gap while taking fire the entire way. As the Johnston surged forward at flank speed, about 35 knots, the water around her began to explode. The Japanese were using dye marker shells. Each ship fired a different color so they could spot where their shells landed. Massive geysers of purple, yellow, and green water erupted around the tiny destroyer. It was surreal, a rainbow of death splashing onto the decks. Evans ordered the ship to chase the salvos. When a shell landed, he would steer the ship toward the splash, betting that the Japanese gunners would correct their aim and not hit the same spot twice. It was a high-stakes game of chicken. For 10 agonizing minutes, the Johnston charged through the barrage. Finally, at 10,000 yards, Evans gave the order. Fire torpedoes. The Johnston unleashed all 10 of her torpedoes in a single spread. Then, Evans whipped the ship around to retreat into the smoke. Seconds later, underwater explosions rocked the ocean. The torpedoes slammed into the Japanese heavy cruiser Kumano, the flagship of the cruiser division. The blast blew the bow completely off the Japanese ship. A 2,000-ton tin can had just crippled a 12,000-ton cruiser. But now the Johnston had the full attention of the Japanese fleet. The Japanese were humiliated. A single destroyer had just embarrassed them. They focused their fire. At 7:30 a.m., the luck ran out. 314-inch shells from the battleship Congo slammed into the Johnston. A 14-inch shell is the size of a telephone pole. It is designed to punch through feet of solid steel armor. When it hits unarmored 3/8-inch steel, it does not just penetrate, it passes straight through like a bullet through paper. These shells ripped through the Johnston's engine room. Moments later, 3 6-inch shells from a light cruiser hit the bridge, the command center of the ship. The damage was catastrophic. The aft fire room was destroyed. Speed dropped from 5 knots to 17. The steering engine was dead. The radar was gone. On the bridge, the carnage was absolute. Shrapnel had shredded the command center. Commander Evans was hit. The blast blew 2 fingers off his left hand and ripped the shirt from his back. Most men would have collapsed. Most men would have sought medical attention. Evans wrapped a handkerchief around his mangled hand and refused to leave his post. Because the bridge was destroyed, he walked to the fantail, the very back of the ship, where he could shout orders down a hatch to the men, manually turning the rudder. He was bleeding. His ship was burning. Half his power was gone. But he was not done. Admiral Sprague ordered the other destroyers of Taffy 3 to attack. As the little wolves, the USS Hull and USS Heerman, passed the crippled Johnston, Evans got on the radio. He did not ask for help. He said, "We will provide fire support." With his broken ship, Evans turned back toward the Japanese fleet. He positioned the Johnston to draw fire away from the other destroyers. It was a decision that guaranteed his death, but bought time for his friends. This is where the battle turned into a chaotic brawl. Smoke covered the ocean. Rain squalls reduced visibility to 0. The Japanese Admiral, Kurita, was confused. He thought he was fighting a massive American task force. He saw these aggressive destroyers charging him and assumed they were screening for heavy cruisers or battleships. He did not realize he was being bullied by a handful of tin cans. Off the Johnston, now a burning wreck, encountered a squadron of Japanese destroyers led by a light cruiser. They were lining up to launch a torpedo attack on the American aircraft carriers. If those torpedoes launched, the carriers were dead. Evans saw them. He had no torpedoes left. His engines were failing. He had one working gun. He charged anyway. He ordered the Johnston to cross the T of the Japanese squadron, a classic naval maneuver where you sail across the enemy's path to bring all your guns to bear. The Johnston opened fire on the lead Japanese ship. They hit it 12 times in a row. The Japanese were so startled by this burning ghost ship attacking them that they broke formation. They fired their torpedoes too early and missed the carriers. Evans had saved Taffy 3 again, but the Johnston was finished. She was surrounded by 5 enemy ships. They poured fire into her from all sides. It was not a battle anymore. It was an execution. The forward gun locker was empty. The captain of the gun mount shouted down to the handling room, "More shells." The voice from below shouted back, "I am looking at a Japanese destroyer. I cannot load anymore." The Japanese ships were so close they were looking into each other's eyes. At 9:45 a.m., Commander Evans gave the saddest order a captain can give: abandon ship. The Johnston rolled over and sank at 10 a.m. Out of her crew of 320, 7 men, 186 died. Commander Ernest Evans was never seen again. But what happened next tells you everything you need to know about this battle. As the survivors bobbed in the oil, slicked water, a Japanese destroyer sailed past them. The American sailors prepared to be machine-gunned in the water, a common atrocity in the Pacific War. Instead, they saw the Japanese captain standing on the wing of his bridge. He looked down at the sinking Johnston, and he raised his hand in a salute. Even the enemy understood what they had just witnessed. The sacrifice of the Johnston and Taffy 3 had a massive strategic impact. Admiral Kurita, convinced he was fighting a superior force, ordered the Japanese fleet to retreat. The invasion beaches were saved. The war in the Pacific continued on schedule, all because a few tin cans refused to act like victims. Tactically, this battle proved that aggression is a force multiplier. If Evans had run, he would have been sunk anyway, and the carriers would have been lost. By attacking, he disrupted the enemy's decision-making loop. He made the Japanese doubt their own intelligence. It is a timeless military lesson. Violence of action can overcome superiority in numbers. Commander Ernest Evans was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. He was the first Native American in the U.S. Navy to receive it. His story reminds us of a fundamental truth of warfare. Technology matters, tonnage matters, armor thickness matters, but in the end, the most dangerous weapon on the ocean is not a battleship. It is a human being who refuses to yield. The Johnston rests 1,000 feet below the surface of the Philippine Sea, the deepest shipwreck ever discovered. It is a fitting resting place for a crew that went to the greatest depths of courage imaginable. This is the story of the USS Johnston, a ship that should have died in the first 5 minutes of battle, but fought for 2.5 hours. A ship that charged when it should have fled. A ship that proved the only thing more powerful than steel is will.